Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Parenting is Easy. I am your host, Hanani Abraham, and I had the pleasure to have an awesome conversation today with Tanner Leatherstein. He has such an awesome story, how he came to America, building a family, a healthy balance between work and home life, separating the two, mixing families, blending families from across the world, old tradition, new tradition, how to have a healthy balance. Such a great, well-rounded conversation. I really hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it. And as always, please like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please follow us on social media, or you can email us at parentingiseasypodcast@gmail.com. Enjoy the episode. So, Tanner, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know there's a lot for us to sort of get to, but maybe you could just give us a little background, where you're from, where you're at right now, what are you up to, and a little bit about your family dynamics that you currently are in right now.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. I'm Tanner. I live in Dallas, Texas for the past 5 years and past 15 years in the U.S., but I was born and raised in Turkey. All my family is in Turkey. I was married in U.S. with a Taiwanese lady, and now we have 3 kids here in Dallas. All of them were born here after we moved from Chicago. I do leather work. I have a leather brand online, and that's like 7-8 years now. And on top of that, in the past 2-3 years, I've been doing social media videos informing people about leather and leather brands, and that's what keeps me busy every day, family and work.
Yeah, and it sounds like the leather stuff, I think, is actually where I sort of came to you and being interested in stuff, and I want to sort of get to that. But there are a few other things I wanted to sort of unpack. So, you growing up in Turkey, your wife, being from Taiwan, how did you guys meet, and what was it that sort of attracted you to Chicago, and then figuring out from there to go to Dallas?
Well, we met in the school at University of Illinois in Champaign. I was doing my MBA, master's, and she was in her master's program for IT, information technologies. And my classmates were her roommates, and that's how we kind of ran into each other at some events, and that's how we started our relationship. And upon graduation, after a year of we dating, we moved to Chicago. We got jobs. I was a consultant. She was a consultant in Chicago. And just 3 years down the road, we got married, and the life started in Chicago. I wasn't very happy with my consulting job, my first corporate experience. I grew up making leather in my family tannery in Turkey. So I was kind of itching for doing something with my hands again, even though my job was insanely comfortable. All my friends told me, you're just stupid to leave that job. But I did, went back to wood driving. And eventually started the leather brand that I'm working right now with her support. And a little before our first baby was born in 2019, I remember like yesterday, this was like 2019, April 26th in Chicago. I'm going to a workshop, and my dad was visiting as well. And it was kind of like the weather getting nice. And that day it snowed. April 26th. I'm like, no, and this is so many times happening. The winter is too long. And I was like, that's it. We're moving. I don't want to have a baby in this weather, 8 months of cold and snow. And that's how we came down to Dallas for 2 weeks, bought a home, moved right away, and had our first baby here.
Wow, what a story. Well, okay, so there are a few things over there. I'm curious, so there you are, a comfortable job, you have your degree, you guys are settling down, so to speak, in Chicago, and there's this, I guess, let's call it a generational thing inside of you that's just like, I need to work with my hands. I need to go back to what our family has been doing, and this rich tradition. So, and we're going to get to a little bit later on the concept of how tradition has come into family life for you. But I'm curious, what is that first conversation like with your wife? And when you're saying, I know I'm comfortable, I know I'm good, but there's something that's just not right. It's not sitting with me. How does one go about having that discussion with a partner when we're talking about wanting to do something and yearning to do something, and at the same time giving up and sacrificing so much, and then you have to convince someone else to also be supportive and probably sacrifice as well. How give us some pointers of how you went about doing that with your wife?
It was really tough. First, you need to convince yourself, which is also tough, because I went to school to get to a consulting job. I spent 2 years and, so much student loans and all that stuff. And after a year, I'm like, no, this is not for me. That doesn't sit right. I'm driving to work every morning. This is the job people are dying for, and I'm dying inside every day I'm going. But eventually, after giving myself a year, I'm like, okay, I'm so sure now I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this is not for me. Now, then I go back to my wife. Probably until then, I wasn't very clearly expressing that. I was like, okay, yeah, it's all right. Like, how's your work? How's your job? It's fine, but it's not what I was thinking it will be. So she was aware, but she didn't know I was gonna quit. And surprisingly, she is like, okay, if that's what you want to do. She supported me fully. Like, what are you gonna do? I don't know. I'm hoping to go back to leather. I don't know where and how, but I will just start driving Uber just to keep paying the bills, and I will figure it out. And she was fully supportive. At first days, she was helping me cutting the leathers and creating my Etsy shop and making my orders shipped. Like, we started everything together. So I think I was very lucky to have that full support without any question. Like, why are you doing this stupid thing?
Well, okay, so on that support, and it's obviously when a person is in a relationship and looking to make not just a career change, but like a life change, right? There's so many different things that come about. Like, how does that work? And I think the biggest point that you took away, which I want to hear more from you, is you have to be able to convince yourself first before you're going to convince anyone else. So, what does that look like internally within you that allows you to be able to have the courage to then speak to your partner about it?
So I think the courage part was not really difficult. And I think it comes from doing so many things before all these jobs and experiences. US is my fifth country that I lived in. I grew up in Turkey, but I moved to China, did some stuff there, like import, export, 6 months. I was planning to stay there, then plans changed. My dad moved our tannery to Turkmenistan and he needed help. So I went to Turkmenistan with him. I ran the tannery for about a year there. Worst year of my life, insane disaster, corruption, and all that stuff. So we left everything, got out. And then we did a similar partnership running a tannery in Armenia for a little over 6 months, again, with hopes to be there a long time, but things didn't work out. And I got a green card lottery coming to US in 2009, just out of blue. So I think doing all those stuff in very weird, different situations, I never had a question about, like, can I make a living? Like, even after coming to US, I was a truck driver. I sold baseball hats around Wrigleyville. I was a cab
Sure.
driver for 3 years in Chicago. So there is no question in my mind at that point, like, can I make a living? Like, I know a million other ways that I can work and, find my way to make money. But the convincing part came, was like, why did I wasted 2 years of my life to go to school, get a degree, to get a job in corporate world? That was like sunk cost idea. It's not never easy to go back on that things that you have already invested in.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and that's something we really talk about on this podcast regarding college and how that works, and the good, the bad, the pros, the cons, and the ugly when it comes to college and what can happen on there. Well, I'll save that for a different discussion. But I'm curious, as we sort of want to move on to the parenting aspect of things, was there something that you could say, you know what, this is what I took out of the college experience, that even though I may not be using that piece of paper that I got out of it, but I'm happy that I went because this experience or this piece of advice was something that I picked up from it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm at this point, I'm 100% super grateful that I did that college experience. It's worth the time. It's worth the investment, because I studied business in Turkey in my undergrad college. I can say I didn't learn anything there, but I learned so much business here, because US education is really ahead of, I think, many countries, especially in the developing world. When it comes to business marketing, this is the birthplace of all these concepts. And I was able to learn so much things that I wasn't aware before, even though being involved in business my entire life. So it definitely gave me an edge to be successful with my own brand. So I didn't know I was doing it to be successful with my own venture later on. I thought I was doing it for becoming a consultant. Now I know it's really helpful to create my own brand at this point, looking back. So I don't feel regretful at that decision at all at now. But it was a hurdle to make that quitting your job decision at the beginning.
I'm sure. It's around the time that you became a parent. Was it the similar time that you were also starting to work for yourself and building your brand, or is it like a little bit off years wise?
Yeah, a couple years after we started the business, then we decided to have our first child. So business was on the way, and it's good. It's growing. We got good response. We were pretty happy with like how things are shaping. So parenting came a little after, but not that it made it any easier. It was a very hectic time. It's growing. There is so much demand in the work that, kind of like work is trying to pull you in. But now you have a new baby, which is an entirely
Priorities.
full job. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how it made it complicated.
So how did it change things for you being an entrepreneur, working for yourself? And I think when you work for yourself, the thing that people don't realize is that it's the ultimate 24/7, 365 job when you work for yourself in that sense. And which is something that resonates with me based on what I do and the way I run my business. But at the same time, when you throw in an amazing, well, here we will call it throwing a wrench into the pile that sort of changes things. It's a beautiful wrench and it's an amazing one. So I'm sort of curious to hear from you. Like, what was that balance like of having to now have a new shift your priorities and now create your work world around your family world?
I am very grateful that my wife actually trained me before this baby, like probably in the first 2 years of 3 years of our relationship and marriage. I was a workaholic, like influenced by my father, which is like work, work, work. There's no limit on anything, and the work is a priority. And I was like that. I was thinking like that. I remember this huge fight we were having with my wife in Rome. We were on a vacation, but I'm trying to answer this Amazon customer, which is insanely ridiculous. Sometimes you get these customers, they're always right and with all the ridiculous reasons. And I ruined our entire day, beautiful day. We're trying to, enjoy this vacation. And we had a huge fight. I'm trying to answer some stupid questions. And at that point, I realized, like, what am I doing? Like, this is really not worth it. And after that, I tried to take a better perspective on like where work ends, where life starts, and relationship, all that priorities. I first time realized that you need to understand and establish those borders between things. And before the baby came, I was way in evolution towards this. At this point, I am completely like, you're absolutely right. You're having your own job could be a 365, 24 hours thing if you let it be. But right now, I am 9 to 5, 5 days. I don't care what happens. I don't answer my phone. I don't respond to emails. I don't look at my social media. Like, work is done. I'm home. I'm home. I don't care. I don't have a business at home. So, but I'm trained by my wife by, I think, very significantly before the baby, which helped a lot.
So okay, so obviously, I think it comes out saying when we're looking to have that work-life balance, having a supportive partner is probably one of, if not the most important things. But you also said another key word over there, which is if you want it. Like
Yes.
you have to also want to make that separation. So here we'll call it 9 to 5, or it could be 8 to 4, or it could be 8 to 6.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you
Choice.
consider your business day, and you could do 8 to 6 4 days a week, or 9 to 5 4 days a week, not 5 days a week. Really up to you. You have to want it, which I think is the key thing of what you're saying over here, Tanner. That you need to be in the mindset of I'm going to do this. So it's not that, well, okay, we'll see what happens when it does, and we're going to we'll figure out how to divide all the chores at home that come along with having a family now. And obviously not just regarding the child, but then there's also home stuff as well. There being a homemaker involves not just one person. And while we could have spouses that could be superwoman, but at the same time, still a certain amount of things that could be a priority for the other partner, and to make sure that they're doing those things. But you have to want it. I think that's the key thing that you can say, that I'm hearing you say, that is really, really important. Now, that being said, there still needs to be certain, I think the word I was thinking of before is boundaries. You have to have them up orders in order to make sure that you're doing that. So what would be one or two things that you can say were important to you to make sure that you have up, so that you can do and have that separation between the work and home?
So I think those times and dates, designing when you're going to work, where you're going to work, place as well, also important. Um, and clearly design and define those, and not be reactive. Most of the time before, I was reacting to work. Like, work comes at you 24 hours with the emails and phones. People email you, customers, just reach out to you, or issues come up and you get notified. Even though you're at home, you're sleeping, you look at your phone, and you're constantly pulled into work if you are just in the reactive mode to this work situation. But once you're gonna realize this and then take a proactive approach to design this life within a work framework, then I think you stop being reactive. Like, work is not gonna tell me what to do, and which is a good part of having your own business. I don't know how much of it I would be able to do when I was working for someone. So I have this, privilege now. But I don't look at my emails, not to get pulled in. Sometimes, even if you don't want it to, you might go there if it's a big problem or like an interesting question from work. So I define, like, okay, we're gonna drop my kids, and then my work start there on the weekdays. 9:30, I arrive at my workshop. This is my workplace. 4:30, I have to go because somebody gotta pick up the kids. And we work together in my office with my wife. She, even though she has a different job, she works remotely, so we are all at the same place all day, every day. So we go drop our kids, we come pick them up. So 4:30 is the last minute. I don't care how much I am not able to get done that day. Like, we gotta go pick up the kids. So there's like little time deadlines as well. So we go pick up the kids, come back home. We have about 2-3 hours for dinner and playtime before they go to bed. And you put your phone down as much as possible. Don't touch it. And then after that, you go to bed, wake up, and repeat again. So I think times and places, once you define where you're going to work, and then be pretty strict about that, is the biggest key that helps me manage it, I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there is a lot of research that talks about, let's say, when it comes to a person being in online school. I think I want to say, I shouldn't say that I'm public over here, but I'm 99% positive I remember the college where it came from, and if I'm correct, I'll post the link to the research in the show notes. But what I saw, what they were talking about was, when you want to be able to be good at homeschooling, for people that are on a college schedule, picking a schedule is of utmost priority. The way you dress. So don't be in your pajamas when you're in school. And the last thing was, like you were just saying, having a set place where you are going to be studying, where you're going to be working. So even if you have a studio apartment, so make a milk crate at the end of the bed where you put your computer on here, and this is where I work. So when I'm here, I can't do anything else. There's no YouTube, there's no gaming, there's no eating, there's just paying attention to here. And I think that's the thing that you're saying that you and your wife have. And God bless you for being able to work with your wife and being in the same place 24/7 pretty much, no matter where you guys are.
24/7.
But I think having that set spot where this is work, and I physically take myself out of that place so that I can go somewhere else, so that I could be with my family, my other main priority, that is key, and that's really important. But something else that you said, Tanner, that I think, I don't know if it was under the radar or something that I picked up that I heard you say, and you said the word privileged. And I think that's an important thing as well, to realize that the position that an entrepreneur is in, someone that's working for themselves, that they can create the world for themselves. They have a autonomy to do things. And I think a lot of times as we're starting off, and it resonates to me what you're saying, and in the sense of, do I really have the autonomy? No, because I need to do this. Well, really? Do I really need to do this right
No,
now? Do I need to answer that person on Amazon when I'm on vacation with my wife in Rome
no,
and we've been
you
dying
don't.
for this vacation for 2 years? No, we really don't.
It takes time
And
to realize that you don't have to. Like, you really don't have to do anything. Like, everything in life is a choice. And, probably that privilege that I was very intentional for that, because, that gives me the ability to pick which days I'm going to work, how many hours, where, how. This is insane privilege. Like, this is the freedom, right? If
yeah,
you're working for someone, you don't
American
have the
dream.
yeah, exactly, full thing. So I'm insanely grateful for what this venture provided me with this option. But today I'm very happy to see a lot of work, like corporate jobs, also gives you a lot of freedom, flexible hours, flexible places, and remote work. So we don't have to do anything. Like, most of the things we can choose once we realize we can choose it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes it's sort of like when you give a child sometimes, like whether it's a bigger piece of chocolate or like this big scoop of ice cream, like, wait, this whole thing is for me. And like their face like lights up and all the endorphins are like going crazy, like, wait, this is for me, like I can have this whole thing. Well, the first time I remember taking my oldest, who's now 16. I remember taking her to a toy store for the first time. It's like you felt that shine with that heaven light of, come walk in with her. It was like the most
Right.
amazing thing in the world. And I think when we're able to say that to ourselves, it goes so far regarding us realizing that I have control over this. I can make my schedule. I can create a balance, which I want to talk more about a little bit. But
Yeah.
I could create that so that I have my priorities. At the same time, let's pay a little bit of respect to the people that are struggling to start a business, whether it's a
Yeah.
clothing company, an online company, or a tannery, where they're looking to, like, hey, I need to get every customer possible, and that person right now, it's December 20th, and they want me to get them something for the holidays. Yeah, I'm going to work hard because this could be potentially my biggest order, so I want to
Right.
do it. But it's also my daughter's birthday on the 22nd, so what am I going to do? So I'm sort of curious to hear from you when it comes to really having that ambition to do everything that we possibly can to run the business. At the same time, having those priorities. How do we go about making sure that we're dealing with it in a way where the things that I need to do are being done properly, but yet with respect to what my priorities are?
So, great question. I don't think I know the answer. I feel like, in the recent years, I'm kind of detecting a pattern that start to work out better for me, and it has a little bit more spiritual philosophy behind it. Um, when I was a very workaholic-minded person, I was also very ambitious, and that continued a little longer than my workaholism, I would say. I was still ambitious up until 2, 3 years ago. I'm going to do this. Whole business is growing. I'm going to even get bigger teams, do better things and make more sales, even though I wasn't working 80 hours a week. But I realized, a lot of those things that I wanted to do didn't work. It actually led me to make a lot of mistakes rushing with that ambition. I waste a lot of time, money, on initiatives that didn't grow, that didn't go anywhere. It kind of took me back. And at some point, I realized the problem was the ambition. And I took a step back. I shrink things down. It took me another 2 years to, come back and calm down from those aggressive growth ambitions. And and surprising thing happened with that mindset. Like, when I dropped the ambition, I was trying to follow, okay, what I feel like I want to work right now, what's going to make me the happiest. And somehow priority, we always have more than we can do in our as entrepreneurs, right? Like, you have a 20 item list, but 5 of them is pretty important. Of course, you have to take care of. But I try to be very conscious of what's going to give me the most pleasure, and I put that a little bit more, time allocation than others, which turns out in very unexpected, surprising ways, it yielded miraculous results, growing the business further than I could ever think of. So social media came out of projects like this, and it grew my business in insane ways that I was trying and failing miserably in the past 3 years with my ambitions. So when I started listening my inner guidance, like, what am I passionate about working on this day, this time, right now, that really started producing surprisingly good results without me planning for it, without me like being ambitious for it. So I don't know how to explain it.
Well, it sounds like, it's sort of, I'm thinking of, let's say, if a person is going to a chiropractor for an injury and it's just not cracking properly or different parts of your back or something like that. And sometimes when you sort of take when you release and you sort of let the ear out of you. So it's sort of
Yeah,
it's the sympathetic nervous system that's sort of being more relaxed, and also you could get the crack in. So it's sort of like when you let go, then you can get the work done in a certain way,
exactly.
which I think
Let
is
go
in a
is,
way what you're saying.
yeah, let go. Like let go and follow that, flow of things.
Right. It doesn't change the passion. It doesn't change
No,
the ambition that you're talking about. But it sort of
right.
also allows you to sort of let it be instead of being rigid. It sort of allows the situation to be. And sometimes if you force it, it doesn't work as well. So
It's
let's
exactly
turn
the
that
key.
into something. Let's say when it comes to parenting, where when you're trying to sort of get your child to do something, but when they don't want to listen to you, they want to do their own thing. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, in situations that you've dealt with, and now you have kids very, very close in age together. How do you go about making sure that each one gets the attention that they need, but you also give them the right to have their own autonomy when it comes to making decisions, but yet also doing the things that they need to do?
Right. So again, it's tough. I'm learning as we go now. The third baby just arrived 3 weeks ago, and
Wow.
my older older kids are almost 5 and 3 right now. So I'm trying to be cognizant of their needs and my approach to them. The older one is a little bit more independent. He's not that cuddly type of kid. But the middle one is very cuddly, affectionate. He doesn't care about watching TV like his older brother, but he wants to come play with you. So, and I end up being playing with him because he demands on the times that we're home time. But I also was like, okay, now I'm not playing with the older one that much because of this guy demands it. And now like, okay, let's go bring the brother in too. Let's turn off the TV. He doesn't, he watched enough. He chose to watch, and we let him until that time. I'm like, okay, let's go figure out a game, invent a game, and we all three can play. I want to make sure, he's not only doing the things that he likes, but also we're having some family time. He gets daddy and mommy time too. And then now with the newborn, of course, there's another demand open over there with the little kid. Gotta give my wife a break. Just handling the baby for the most part of the day. So definitely, it's a tricky thing. Constantly checking in my brain. I was like, am I on a balance here? Am I playing too much, or am I doing too much for this one and then not the other ones? So it's a learning thing.
Oh, for sure. And I think that learning never changes. And what I hear from my parents that it still doesn't change, even though the four of us are in our late 20s and 30s and 40s. So I think it's something that it is a constant. And I'm curious, as you talk about, having a relationship with your dad, working with him at one point even as well. Uh, what was your upbringing like in a way of things of what you saw, and how are you applying that to what you have now?
Very different. I mean, I have great parents. My dad helps us with the work, with his, guidance and experience. My mom was a housewife and just taking care of us. And we didn't see much of dad when we were growing because it was all work. He was traveling. It was, day and night, just at the tannery. So work never ended. So we grew up not much playing with the dad at home. It wasn't kind of that traditional, family structure in Turkey. The dad worked and mom is the housewife, takes care of the kids. It's absolutely nothing like that with us here. We're 24/7 together. We do everything together with my wife. Work is same, home is same, everything is divided. And kids see both of us equally. So it's quite different. And I'm happy that it's different. Like, I'm not actually regretful or sad that I couldn't spend time with my dad. I was actually enjoying a lot the time that I spent with him at work. He was very passionate taking me to work. I was in the tannery with him like 5, 6, 7 years old. And when I was 11, he told me like, why don't you go get 5 sheepskins there and then, make your own leathers to make your very first leather jacket. And that's how I got into the leather business. And it was like a game for me at the beginning, and it became a life passion that got me today. So I was lucky from that perspective. Like, that was dad's world, and he got me in with him playing very early on. That's how I played with my dad at the time. But it's different with mine today. It's with my kids, with my life. But definitely, I think I like this more. I don't want to take my kids to work to have them spend time with me in my context only. So I think we're trying to do this age appropriate with my wife as a partner. Now they're kids that needs to be home. They need to play. They need to watch TV. They need to do this, and we do that with them. We're different, and I'm happy about that difference.
Have there been things from your upbringing that you've sort of liked or resonated with you that you remember that you've brought in traditionally into your parenting today?
A few things were very like influential. Nobody lied or hide anything from us when we were growing up. They were very honest and clear about things. If they said we could do something, we would do it. If they say we can't do it, we can't do it. And for reasons they explained to us, we never felt, in the dark. We never felt cheated from our parents. I think it was very important that that is still going on. Like, we are super conscious about that. If we say something to our kids, okay, we're gonna do this tomorrow. Let's go have a dinner or somewhere you guys like. We gotta do it. Like, no matter what. Like, if things change, plans change, we promise the kids, and they need to see that mom and dad says something and it has to happen, because promises are important. And I think they're getting it now. Like, they're seeing that pattern. Like, okay, these guys say something and they follow up. And then I see the same thing they're trying to do too. Like, they say something, they will do, and then they do it, which makes me very happy. I think that's one thing I'm trying to get from my parents. And other things, another huge thing is they respected us no matter what age we were in. They asked our opinion. They considered what we said. It wasn't like, what do you know? You're a little kid. We never had that treatment, which was rare actually in my time, in my place in Turkey. And that kind of made me very close to my parents and very confident that I was considered as a person in the family. And I'm doing the same thing with my kids, never ignoring them because, they're kids.
Yeah, and I think it also helps if you have a good separation between work and home life, so you're able to pay attention to them more. And like you say, yeah, like you were saying before, putting down the phone goes really far. So you have this, I think, very healthy, rich tradition of and memories that you've brought together with you. But your wife is coming from another part of the world, and that also brings some amazing things, but also sometimes different things. I'm curious if you could talk about how to mix the two ingredients to create this beautiful recipe that you guys are creating and beautiful family. How do you go about having that balance? And what's your role in making sure that the kids get a healthy, let's call it, balance of both?
Yeah, that's tricky. Again, like a lucky thing, we have like a mix of two very far separate cultures. There are things I think my wife didn't have growing up that, I enjoyed, and we're benefiting, and we're taking that from my upbringing. But there are things from hers that actually, this is better. Maybe probably it's healthier. Like, I don't know, maybe.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I'm trying to think like what example. But for example, that being respected as a kid is a lot. I think it was a lot bigger on my family, not with theirs. Like, I think they were a little bit like, you're a kiddo. You don't get involved in some things, kind of thing, and that kind of created some distance between the parents and the kids on their side. I can see it. I could see it at the beginning of our relationship. Actually, with us spending a lot of time together, it's changing as well. Like, she's a lot closer to her parents now than 5 years ago, with our minds coming closer to each other. Their relationship is changing as well. But on their end, maybe being a little bit more conscious on what you eat, like having more balanced, in your meals and things like that. They have a better approach than we do. Like we were never that kind of conscious in Turkey. Like we didn't eat unhealthy, but we never thought about like having the vegetable and having carbs and the proteins, equal balance. They were that way, and now we're adopting that in our family. Like, okay, we're trying to make sure that every meal we're trying to observe that balance, and kids get enough of everything, for
That's
example.
that's amazing, and I think one of the things that when you have different traditions and different family backgrounds come together, and trying to create this amazing homogenized recipe, is when we're receptive to the other side, which is how you can get those ingredients to sort of work together in that sense. And I think when you model when you and your wife model that type of behavior of, oh yeah, well, this is what dad's side does, or this is what mom's side does, and it's awesome, it's amazing, and we're going to take some of this, we're going to take some of this, we're going to make what works for us. I think that in itself is important for a child to see that there are multiple ways of looking at something, and we can work through, let's, for lack of a word, I want to say adversity, but that's not what I mean. I mean, just the fact of they're going to go to school, they're going to go to the store, they're going to see different people. And when you have
Yeah.
a home that's already creating that, well, okay, well, my mom is from here, my dad is from here, we do A, B, and C, and also D, E, and F, because that's what we do things
Right.
in this house. It creates a certain level within the child to be more open, to be more
Yes.
respectful, and to be more curious about what's happening out there and how they're going to see themselves in the world. Has there ever been a situation where, it could be with your oldest, that they've asked questions just regarding different cultures or different things, or traditions, whether it's in the home or outside the home?
I'm trying to think of an example that he asked anything. He's very observant. Like he picks up so many little nuances. And we took him to Turkey, we took him to Taiwan. And my parents come here for long terms, and her parents come here. In fact, they're here right now. We're helping with the baby. But I can't think of a question like why, like a specific question. I'm sure this happened because there's so many fundamental differences between Turkey and Taiwan, and it surprised the kids. But I can't think of a concrete example right away.
Okay. I'm sure that's something that is a constant, and I think for anyone listening to this, that you have two spouses that are coming from different backgrounds. I think the biggest thing, Tanner, that we're learning is be open, be receptive, and stay curious, and that's how you can sort of work on that, making sure that both sides are being heard and being seen within the home. And I think that's always to give over that message. Now, you're have a great opportunity to have your parents and in-laws come to your house or your kids, even though they don't live a little, hop, skip, and a jump away from grandparents, but they still get to see them and they get to know who they are. And I'm curious what that's been like for you guys starting a family. Right, even when you first moved to Dallas over the past 5 years, and not having family around to sort of be with you. And I'm curious what that's been like, and you could talk a little bit about what that story has been like for the two of you wanting to start a family, but yet not having family around to help you guys out.
Like everything, it has pros and cons. I think there's definitely benefits to not having family very close to you, which is, you're a lot more free, and they don't see everything you do. They don't have an opinion about everything you do. Parents doesn't always approve what you do, even though you're like 35, 40 years old, whatever. At this point, you have your own family and
But they
kids.
still love you.
They still love you, but sometimes this causes weird dynamics
Tension.
in families. Yeah, tensions for sure. So that is a good side that we enjoy. Like our parents are not here, they don't see us. So when you're at a distance, when you come together, either we go there or they come here, we missed each other. We overlook those things. Like we are just more in the moment and enjoying this short, limited together time. So that's the benefit of it. Like we are more love focused than trying to pick on these little things that might create that tension, which happens when you have your parents close. Like if I lived in Turkey or if we lived in Taiwan, I'm sure that would be more of the situations as like, why are you guys doing that way? Like that doesn't make sense, And then you have to explain this, and it everybody's familiar with these things, which have the family across. But on the other hand, it has drawbacks. Like you literally have nobody. Like especially once we moved to Dallas, I was in Chicago for about 8-9 years before this, and Ariel was there 6-7 years around Chicago area with school. We had friends, so we had a little bit of social life. But once we came to Dallas, everything was there, and we didn't have any friends here. All the new friends we are having now is around our kids, around our school, its parents. If anything happens, God forbid, you can't have a parent to call it, hey, can you come take care of the kid? And then I have to go do this urgent thing came up. Like we don't have a support structure like that. And it's kind of little uneasy. Thankfully, we never needed a help like that so far. And we were lucky enough that my parents and her parents had the flexibility and freedom to come here 2 months at a time, 3 months at a time. At some point, my parents stayed here 5 months when we had our first baby during the COVID time and all that. So we had that kind of support.
Wow. 5 months.
Yes.
I love my parents and I love my in-laws, but 5 months, I got to say, Tanner, you should get well, maybe your wife should probably get a bigger reward than you, but you should get a reward for being able to have in-laws in the house for that long. And I think it's I think it is a blessing to have family and to have
Yeah.
to have a support. And when they're not close by, when they don't have the flexibility to just, oh, I need you in the house, she's going to labor, so we have to go to the hospital. Okay, we'll be there in 30 seconds, type thing, or
Right.
even if it's a half hour. Here it's like, I don't know, maybe in like 2 days I could get to you, but like, at the earliest. So it's like that does change things. So how can a couple that is dealing with, let's call it long distance family, how can they go about making sure that they're doing what's right for them without that family support?
Oh, that's a very tough question, which I may not have experienced, luckily, because anytime we needed help, we were able to tell either my parents or her parents to, hey, we're gonna have this third baby now, and I was like, okay, when are we coming? They ask us like the due date 2 weeks before they arrive. We're gonna stay 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is, and all the times of need, we were able to communicate and get that help by some of them coming here and any time frame possible. If we didn't have that, I think it would be difficult, like on us. I'm imagining now if they weren't able to come for helping with this third baby, well, that's going to be difficult because now I have 2 little kids. I have to handle them while she is handling the little baby, the most difficult first month. It would be a lot more disastrous. Now I have my in-laws here, just feels like heaven. I enjoyed them being here so much. I miss them, maybe sometimes more than my wife. So it's interesting. We have such a nice time here when they're here. They're enjoying the kids and they help so much. Like they don't let me take the plates off the dinner table once we're done. They prepare, they clean it. We're like, oh no, go play with the kids. No, go take care of the baby. So I am that lucky. I never experienced that, but now thinking of like, what if I didn't have that? That would be a huge difference. I don't know how to solve that. Probably will just take a little bit more willpower and effort.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's some of it like resonates with me. I something that I always tell anytime I hear someone getting engaged. I'll always tell the groom or even the bride that that they should have in-laws like I have. And I consider myself very lucky to have the in-laws that I have. And at the same time, sometimes when people move into your house for long periods of time, it can cause a little bit of tension, and that could cause a little bit of I guess you could say not of the norm for everyday life. So how do you go about it, creating that balance for your kids especially, but I would say just as important between you and your wife when you have your parents or your in-laws staying by you for long periods of time?
So initially, it was definitely there was that dynamics needs to establish kind of situation. First time my parents came here, stayed a longer period. First time her parents came, usually it was around our first baby born, like they came to help. and it was the COVID time, like we were in the lockdowns and all that restrictions. Um, there was a lot more friction for reasons that, again, my wife's relationship with her parents were not, as close or as smooth as mine. And I observed them, like how they react. And there was some moments like of that tension and territory and authority situations, like who is going to make the call here. I think I came in the picture there, being the decision maker between the parents, being the guests here, yet still sees them the authority over their daughter, but daughter seeing the place as her own now, being her own family member. Not, you can't tell me what to do here kind of situation, like a different dynamic
Right.
developing. I was the balancing factor, the kind of like making and helping with some decisions. So that helped establishing those norms. And everybody is a lot more comfortable at this point, like second and third. Now we have a good dynamic. Like everybody knows how things work here, and we don't have that friction anymore. And same with my parents. Initially, there were moments that my parents were like, the daughter-in-law, like they are trying to think like they're home, and it may not be the perfect behavior for their standards, but it's like, hey, then again, I was most of the time the mediator. I think I was like,
Right.
this is my place, and gratefully my parents respect me a great deal, so I was able to tell them how it's going to be in this new norm, and then we were able to establish those.
So as long as there's someone setting the guidelines for how things are going to work, and
Yes.
and how we're going to go about things here in this house right now, that can really help to make sure that there's proper boundaries up, using that word again, but yet
Yeah.
everyone knows what their role is. So you're
Yes.
talking about, you're also your in-laws having a relationship now that has been better over the past couple of years. I'm curious, when you talk about your role as a husband and as a son-in-law, and wanting to things to be well, but at the same time, like not trying to run the show and not take over. What's your role, and how do you go about having that balancing act of trying to be a therapist in some way, but also knowing your role of being a husband?
It was actually like a therapist in the private, mostly for my wife. And after observing the relationship here, looking at how they behave and react to each other, I'm trying to think like, why is it? And then, you know, after a good deal of observation, I talked to my wife in our private time. I was like, hey, I'm observing this. Like, this is how you're reacting. Probably you're not even aware to your parents. Like this, they don't intend any ill thing with this, but you're automatically reacting this way. I don't know. It could be coming from, just an experience you had when you were a kid. We were having these conversations. I think my wife started to realize these things like first time. I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that. And then she was more conscious of it next time and next time. And her parents seeing this changing slowly, they're coming closer and warmer. They change their behavior too. They're not as harsh. So I think making my wife aware of some of the things she was doing, coming from her, I think young times with her family relationships, and then slowly she adjusting that after realizing some of the flaws, actually made a mirror effect. Her parents started to get happier with her behavior, and then she
Mhm.
become more comfortable with their behavior. So it improved. And time to time, we still talk like, "Hey, do you realize how different it was 5 years ago?" And it's like, "Yeah, it's insane." And she says, like, "I think your observation and letting me know about those things helped very much with that."
So a couple being able to have conversations behind closed doors sometimes can be very, very
Yeah.
beneficial. It could be nerve-wracking.
Very friendly and like transparent. It's like, don't get me wrong, but this is how I see things as a completely outsider. I just want to let you know, like, I'm not saying you're wrong or you need to change, but this is how I see it. If you want to give it a try, maybe you will get a different response from them.
Yeah, I love that, and I think just by the fact that you're putting it out there, not in a I'm looking at like a critic. or is someone
Yeah.
that's just like, you're doing something wrong, and they're like pointing out every single little detail. That's not what you're doing. You're coming from a place of, hey, honey, I noticed this. Let's have a conversation about it. And you can tell me to go jump in a lake, and all right, fine, no problem. I'm here. I want to talk, but if this is not a conversation you want to have, or you're okay with the way things are, I'm going to leave it alone. But I think by you having that engaging and friendly conversation, like you're saying, I think that's something that
Yeah.
is really important over here. And again, I think a lot of it also has to do with upbringing that you had with your parents, and having that respectful relationship that
Sure.
allowed you to have a certain version of self that can go ahead and really be of help both to the family, from the recipe that you guys are making together, you and your wife, and at the same time as a whole regarding the family tree, which obviously your parents and her parents are a part of. I'm curious, as we sort of wrap things up over here before I have some rapid fire questions, are there other pointers or other things that come to mind that that we started talking about in this conversation, but at the same time that we haven't talked about when it comes to having different nationalities, different backgrounds of people coming together to start a family? Any other pointers or something that comes to mind that you think is beneficial for us to be talking about for a minute or two over here?
I don't know. Two things, like very clear advantages I see having two nationalities, husband and wife, the spouse's side, is one, the kids get an immense benefit of language. Now, they speak three languages. They speak English, Mandarin, and Turkish, um, without even they realizing it. Like they just automatically switch languages between um, people they're talking to
That's
automatically,
amazing.
which is crazy. I love it. And other thing was, my parents don't speak English, and they speak only Turkish, and my in-laws don't speak Turkish, and they speak a little bit English. But so my parents and her parents cannot communicate, and it becomes a very friendly relationship. It's like the two groups of tourists trying to interact each other with phones and translators and things like that, which creates no friction. I would say it's all about fun and laughing and having things. But I see, especially in the Turkish culture, uh, they both speak Turkish, and then they're like all into each other's business and face this creates all sorts of problems. I've seen friends get divorced because of parents cannot get along. So this was another benefit I never expected having.
It's unbelievable hearing it that way. I usually heard the opposite, but to hear you say how the relationship is better in some ways because of the lack of communication, because they've had to learn how to communicate differently. And I think that's really what's key. And I'll tell you what comes to mind. I remember going on a hike a little while ago, and it was through this like a rocky trail, and seeing these gorgeous trees with their roots growing inside the rocks, and how those roots come out because they need to get water from somewhere. They need to solidify itself in the rock somewhere. And these the I want to call it artistry of how those roots looked in their surroundings, which wasn't in any soil, was absolutely gorgeous because they have to survive. They have to do things in order to go ahead and
Right.
make sure and get the nutrients that they need. And I think that's what you're saying, Tanner, is that your parents and in-laws had to figure out how to get along because their kids are their legacy, and they're going to be hopefully, and like you are with three kids, continuing that legacy. So let's figure out how to do this. And even though there's a language barrier, but it doesn't mean there's a communications barrier. And they figured out
Yeah.
how to sort of get along and have a relationship from opposite ends of the world. Well, not really opposite ends of the world, but from different places, in the sense that they
Yes.
need to go ahead and have a connection, have a communication, which I think is a wonderful lesson. And then for you to go ahead and see it, and to have that experience is got to be something that is obviously very unique, but I think at the same time something that could be really, really helpful for how you view communication and how you view relationships. And that's something that I think you can pass down to your kids as well. But I think that the language as well, having your kids speak multiple languages, is obviously something that I think all of us wish, and unfortunately most of us Americans don't have that amazing opportunity. But hopefully that's something that you guys take advantage of, and they
Oh,
continue
absolutely.
to learn those languages. So before we have the rapid fire questions over here, Tan, I'm curious. Tell us a little bit about where people can find you, the work that you do, and what you're up to right now.
most popular place to find me and my work is the social media, easiest place. Tanner.Leatherstein. Just like the name on the screen, there's a dot between. On TikTok, Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel. The same at Tanner.Leatherstein works for all of them. TannerLeatherstein.com is my website currently under my Pegae, which is my leather goods brand, hosted under that website, which I write about my leather product reviews from all kind of brands, top luxury houses from Louis Vuitton to Hermes. If you're trying to learn a few things about leather and leather brands, you might check out those things.
I would highly recommend it, and that's where I actually found Tanner in the first place. And this has been an absolute pleasure. As we sort of finish up over here, I'm curious if you can think of someone in history, and it can't be a family member, that you would feel comfortable to have as a babysitter for your kids, dead or alive. This person, who would that be?
Oh, okay. The first thing comes to mind is like uh, a, an Eastern tradition philosopher. I think Gandhi. Not that I know Gandhi or history um, like immensely, but the things I know about the mindset and philosophy, that's the people I like to have my kids get exposure to.
Oh, awesome. I love that. We have never got that answer here on this podcast. So I love, especially hearing something for the first time. That's really awesome to hear. I'm curious, is there anything that you would recommend for people to either listen to or to follow or to read that can help them in their, whether it's parenting or relationships that they are currently working on?
I recently discovered this author, Gabor Mate. I think Gabor
Ah,
Mate. I mentioned
yes.
this in our earlier call. Hold On to Your Kids is the book I really love. He has more than one books, but that book probably was the most influential book that I run into in the parenting circles, and I'm trying to get exposure to this man's ideas and philosophy on parenting. I absolutely recommend checking that out. I'm
Yeah,
not there yet.
and the author that he wrote together with, Gordon Neufeld, is also phenomenal. I'd highly recommend his stuff as well. And not without giving away the whole book, but Gordon was someone that actually worked with one of his kids, and that's how they built a relationship. So that's how they sort of got to where they are. And I think you can find them on YouTube. I'll try to
Yep.
post a link in the show notes for the book as well. Highly recommend it, and that's a really really good choice. The last question for you over here. I'm
Yep.
curious if, thinking about you being a parent, five kids, of three, family of five, and having there's so many different things on your plate, and having this juggling act that you've been really trying to do the best that you possibly can. If there would be a everyday mundane superpower that you would like to have as a dad that would benefit you as a parent, what would that be?
Being able to live without a smartphone, that would be a superpower today. If if I could, which is that's why I'm calling it a superpower. I don't think it's possible now, but I would love that. Like that would make things a lot easier.
That makes perfect sense. Tanner, this has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time today.